Yeah! James Stewart is now a member of the AMA Motorcycle Hall of Fame, which is awesome news for media members like myself, Jason Weigandt, and for you folks at home, because we finally have absolute closure on James Stewart's racing career. Because the strangest thing about it is the rider that is perhaps most talked about, most dissected, most under the microscope, most polarizing, most love-hate, most spectacular, most everything. We never really got to dissect his career when it was over because we didn't know when his career was over. James just disappeared from the races at the end of 2016. We kept hearing rumors maybe of a comeback here and there, and it never materialized, and the AMA had to be sweating it, knowing that 5 years after an athlete competes, they're eligible for the Hall of Fame, but we didn't even know if James was retired or not until 2019, when he finally put out a series of videos through his gear brand, 7, and said the R word, retired, which set the clock back to 2016. By 2021, 5 years was up, and he was eligible and, of course, voted into the Hall of Fame. But because we had that 3-year period of not even knowing if James was retired, all the great things we could have done to celebrate his career, we didn't know because it was like we were in this pause of maybe his career isn't over. So this weekend, now that he's officially in the Hall of Fame, I started to think about the fact that it's over, and then I realized something else had happened. In the NFL, Tom Brady is considered the GOAT, the greatest of all time, the best player ever at the most important position in America's most popular and most watched sport. And for the first time, Tom Brady is finally starting to slip. Yeah, he still looks like he's 25 years old at age 45, but he's finally not playing that well anymore, and his team, the Tampa Bay Bucks, are even worse. And even worse than that, Tom has been served divorce papers by his wife. So now he officially really is human and not a robot or an alien or an avocado ice cream milkshake. Because see, like all of us, you want to have one more good time with the boys and your wife is like, don't do it or I'll serve you divorce papers. Well, even Tom Brady isn't above that. And in the NBA, LeBron James, love or hate, that's kind of how it works when you're at the top. He might still be loved or hated, but he's no longer the best player in the NBA, even though he's very good. That's probably Giannis Antetokounmpo is the best player. He's probably not even the most popular either. That's probably Steph Curry and his team. LeBron's team, the Los Angeles Lakers, they are terrible. Yeah, Brady and LeBron trying to fight back father time. They're at least not the best in their sport right now. Of course, with LeBron, there's always this argument that he was never the GOAT. That's Michael Jordan. But guess what? Michael Jordan is retired also. Which leads me to what I realized here. James Stewart is done. Ricky Carmichael is done. Jeremy McGrath, the king of Supercross, is done. Also done, pretty much, on a motorcycle, I think, is Travis Pastrana, who's probably the most uncategorized but also most spectacular and watched dirt bike rider maybe ever. He's pretty much, again, done with the dirt bike thing. What's it going to be like to live in a post-GOATS world? And should we even be using GOATS in plural anyway? Let's get into it. With this video brought to you by anti-gravity batteries. Now, this battery right here is perfect for a guy like me. It's the same weight as the battery in your stock bike, but it has more power. So if you stall in a race, it'll restart more quickly. If you're in an off-road race with a dead engine start, it'll get you whole shots more quickly, or off the line more quickly. The rest of it's up to you. You could probably leave your bike unstarted in the garage a little bit longer than the stock battery, and the bike will still crank. But if you're a complete moron, I probably want to order one of these. And you're not going to start your bikes in, say, November 1st through March 1st, like when riding season's over. They get a battery with a built-in jump starter, and your bike will still crank right up. Or if you're an elite racer, like, say, the Eli Tomacks and Jason Andersons of the world, they use this battery, which is the same amount of power as your stock battery, but it's less weight. Do you know how expensive and difficult it is to put and purchase titanium bolts on your bike to just lose some weight? Or you just take the stock battery out, take this battery out of the box, put it in your bike, and your bike's instantly lighter. In a very important spot, like up high. Makes your bike handle better. Anti-gravity batteries.com. Yes, we're in a post-GOAT world. And what does that look like going forward? Now, there will be other stars. Like I said, Giannis Antetokounmpo, great player in the NBA. We have Eli Tomac in our midst right now, and Eli Tomac has gone from best of his era to one of the all-time greats. And it's not like people are going to the races not cheering for Eli, saying, I've seen Ricky Carmichael. This guy sucks. No, you still appreciate greatness in its time, even if it isn't maybe the greatest greatness of all time. Eli's awesome, And people respect it. And the respect the fans have shown to him have certainly put a little pep in his step, and he seems to be enjoying the races more than ever. So that's not a problem going forward, as in we're not going to have great athletes. But what is it going to be like to live in a world where the greatest of all times, the GOATs, wait, how do you even plural that word? Greatest of all time was supposed to be an honor bestowed on one person in each sport. That's why it was such a big deal to give Carmichael that honor. He has the most combined wins in motocross and supercross. In fact, it's not even close. He was the GOAT. But lately we're starting to hear people use terms like, this dude is a GOAT, or this guy is one of the GOATs. So if we're going to go plural on that, let's throw Carmichael and Stewart and Pastrana and McGrath. Heck, old-timers will still say that Bob Hanna had a bigger impact on the sport and maybe was the greatest ever. Or you could probably make that argument before Hanna with Roger DeCoster. He was the man. No one's going to argue that. The king. No one's going to argue that. The fastest man on the planet. I'm going to make sure no one argues that. Let's just bunch them all together and say they were all great. And no one is going to necessarily be able to eclipse what they've done. And it's all in the past. And it's the same thing for LeBron on his way out, and Brady on his way out, and Michael Jordan, who's been out for 20 years. What's it like to live in a post-GOAT or post-GOATs world? And that's what's going to make it interesting going forward. Because anytime an athlete rises to the top, and again, there will be Tomacs, and there will be Antetokounmpos, there will be great players. There'll be Patrick Mahomes in the NFL right now. But then they're going to be compared to the past, and that's probably where it gets a little bit unfair, because you're comparing them to the greatest ever and that full body of work. And I'm going to say it right now. It's not fair for Jet Lawrence, who a lot of people have anointed as the next great dominant rider in the sport, and I'm not even arguing it. Not only if you look at his skills and his charisma, but also the landscape of how many riders in their late 20s, early 30s are probably on their way out just about the time that Jet's about to get into the 450 class. Chase Sexton has had to go through Eli Tomac to try to win titles. I don't think Jet's going to have to do that. So the door is certainly open for Jet Lawrence to win. But what it will inevitably happen, or probably has already happened, is that people will start comparing Jet to the GOATs. And that's not really fair. I'm just going to state this right here and right now. Okay, here's what makes some of these GOATs the GOATs. First of all, nobody won like Carmichael. That's it. Full stop. No one's ever going to even come close to his records, his level of dominance. It was absolutely ridiculous. And I got to see most of his races in person, trust me. Jeremy McGrath, I always say this. He's the only rider you can actually draw a line and say, here's the popularity of the sport before he was there and winning. Here's the popularity of the sport after. Jeremy McGrath literally, absolutely grew the sport in a way that no other rider did. Can you believe, by the way, it's 30 years almost since McGrath started winning his first Premier Class Supercross title was in 1993, 30 years. He hasn't been Supercross champion in 20. And then there's Stewart. I will take this to the grave. You can put it on my tombstone, maybe even Halloween style. I'll build a fake grave out in the front of my house. Put this on the tombstone. Jason Weigandt has never seen a rider dominate races the way James Stewart dominated when he was in the 125 class or as an amateur. And furthermore, you will never see anyone dominate the way James Stewart did. Never, ever, ever. Don't even try it. Don't even compare it. This isn't an insult toward Eli or Jet or anyone else that's on the rise. Hayden Deegan or some kid who hasn't even been conceived yet. No one is going to dominate races like James Stewart did. We're talking, he would be on the track with current pros, his actual peers, professional riders, and they would be scared when he would go by. You'd see them make mistakes when he blew by them because they couldn't believe the speed differential. We're talking running into the back of guys as he came through the pack in Supercross because he was so much faster than the other pros. It's like when the local pro goes out on the track with the novice class. But that was James against other pro riders. He was pulling away by seconds in the first lap of motos in 2004 when he's on a 125 against 250Fs. No comparison. It's not even worth discussion. I don't care what anyone does. They will never dominate the way I saw James Stewart dominate. And I was lucky enough to see the majority of his races, maybe 80 or 90% of them in person. I've never seen someone dominate like that, and I never will. It should be obvious, but I shouldn't have to unpack these things. But believe it or not, again, James broke into the sport 20 years ago. James hasn't raced in now 6 years. McGrath hasn't been a champ in 20, and he started winning 30 years ago. I remember when Carmichael came back and raced 25-plus class at Loretta's, and there were a lot of kids saying, I've never seen Carmichael ride in person. Time moves quickly. And we go into a post-GOAT world. And people will start wanting to make comparisons and be like, well, that star is faded. I haven't seen those guys in a while. Maybe the current stars are just as good, if not better, than those past stars. This is the frustration for people that watch Bob Hanna ride. They don't believe anyone's ever done it better than Hanna. And there are NFL fans that say Joe Montana was better than Tom Brady. And then there's the Michael Jordan thing. Unassailably, can LeBron eclipse him? Most fans will say not. So we've got to protect the fort here. We've got to admit that what we've seen already might already be the best there's ever been. And that's a sobering thought, right? You always want to think the next great thing is going to be even greater than what you've seen before. But we're living in a post-GOAT world now. But two things can be true at the same time. That shouldn't be an insult. That shouldn't diminish what Eli Tomac or Chase Sexton did or have done. And it shouldn't diminish what Jet Lawrence is capable of doing. Or whoever comes next. Maybe Hayden Deegan. He'll probably set records at least for the most talked about rider. I'll give most of the credit for James. He had an unbelievable talent. I think it's underrated, by the way, how hard he worked. We tend to think of hard work on training, but remember, this is motorcycle racing. It's not exercise competition. And James was known for wearing out VHS tapes and VHS tape machines. Google it, kids. Studying the greats and then going out on his own track and putting those things into practice to become the most skilled motorcycle rider. It wasn't just talent. It was hard work and love of the sport that got him there. And maybe that love kind of got lost for James toward the end, and also the love of the sport toward him kind of got lost. But now that he's retired and he has closure and he's in the Hall of Fame and we got to see what life would be like without him when he wasn't around at the races, I could not believe the way the fans reacted to him when we got him in the booth at Budds Creek this year. I also couldn't believe the way he reacted to them. I think James left the sport kind of 50-50 on like, well, this has been good, but it's also been a little bad at times. And now it's all good. Also, I've never seen someone study a screen and intake information on motorcycle racing like James. Right here, first-hand experience. Like, he was right here. I could touch him with his hand. I've never seen someone stare at a screen like that. That's work ethic. That's love of the sport. That's hard to quantify or qualify, but just trust me, it's there. We're in a post-GOAT world. Doesn't take away from anyone that's here now or coming up in the future. Heck, the sport won't even allow it. I think two-strokes draw a greater line between talent and skill than what we see on four-strokes now. Plus, all the riders grew up with an opportunity to ride on great tracks with trainers and coaches. It was all over the map back in the Carmichael and Stewart and McGrath days. They were kind of teaching themselves. You could probably give a lot of credit to Big James, but not everybody had a Big James, and not everybody had a Jeannie Carmichael. And everybody has somebody like that on their side. So the field has gotten closer together. That makes for great racing. It's not a bad thing. It just means that level of dominance, that level, we're past it. So what does that mean for the future? I'll ask you that. Drop it in the comments. What does it mean to be in a post-GOAT world? Yep. Is that okay?